frequencies open. Welcome to Trek Retrek here on Geek the F Out. I am Captain Johnny.
I'm Ensign Kayla.
And we are here to talk about the first episode of Season 2, Episode 30 of Star Trek, the original series, Amok Time.
Amok, amok, amok.
You just like saying that, don't you?
I do. Because in Hocus Pocus, she's like, amok, amok, amok. So it's the Star Trek version. But yeah, if you haven't watched us before, welcome. Our premise of Trek Retrek is that we're going episode by episode from the very beginning of Star Trek, the original series, and discussing them from our two very different perspectives of Johnny seeing everything Star Trek before we started all this, and I've seen no Star Trek before starting all this except for Chris Pine movies. But yeah, obviously I've watched all the first season in Strange New Worlds now, so I've seen a bit.
You are on your way.
Yes. Hopefully I'll rank up soon. I know.
I wouldn't say soon, but getting close.
Yeah.
Closer than we were 30 episodes ago.
Yes, indeed.
So this episode, TVGuide.com says Theodore Sturgeon wrote this memorable episode in which Spock falls victim to Pon farr, the Vulcan mating urge, and challenges Kirk in ritual battle to the death. So the way that they describe it there, it makes it sound like that's not how it happened.
Yeah, not quite. Yeah, not exactly how it happened.
Yeah, it's not quite. It's but the gist of it, but
yes,
it's not like Spock was like, you fight to the death.
Yeah, which obviously, since I've seen Strange New Worlds now, we kind of got flashes of this because it didn't actually happen. It was like Spock dreaming this, that T'Pring would challenge him.
Yeah,
and then he would have to face himself.
Yeah.
So it was cool to see. I was like, oh, I recognize this. Like, I kind of know what's going on. And also, so many people are like, just wait till you get to Amok Time. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know if it quite lived up to those expectations, but it was still a good episode. But we can get more into that later. Shall we get into it?
Sure.
Okay. So the episode starts off is McCoy asks Kirk if he's noticed anything strange about Spock lately and says that he's been very nervous and hasn't been eating. And we see Chapel's made this special soup for Spock. And I'm like, oh, there's the love story between them. And McCoy mentions how she keeps hoping, and I was like, oh, so he knows that she likes him, which, I mean, there's only a few, like, I mean, was there any other episode besides Naked Time where she showed interest in him?
Not to the extent that I feel like everybody would know.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was very interesting that Bones saw that and mentioned it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
you have to kind of assume that her and Bones spend a lot of time together that we don't see.
Yeah, totally.
So.
Yeah, but Spock is not having it. He throws the soup and he asks Captain Kirk for leave to Vulcan. And then the intro, I don't know if I was crazy, but like it sounded more operatic.
Yeah, they added the vocalization. The woman going crazy. Yeah, and there's a little bit of, I think it's in. I have a note about it in the episode trivia, so we'll talk about it then too.
Mm-hmm. And then Kirk pries more into Spock, but Spock doesn't really give him answers as to what's going on. Kirk leaves, and we see that Spock's hand is shaking, so that's not good. And a message comes through saying that the ceremony has been moved up 7 days at Altair 6, so now they can't stop at Vulcan. And then we have Chekhov.
Yeah, Chekhov's debut.
Yeah. Yes.
Um,
Very exciting.
yeah, the Spock like holding the stylus behind his back and like clenching it in his handshaking was a nice bit of subtle. Whether Nimoy just did that or if it was direction, you know, it kind of gets the point across. And I liked the lion statue with the like brazier that had colored lights in his quarters. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, he has a weird room. Like, I don't know if that's just how Vulcans are, but I was noticing that too. I'm like, this seems more like, it gives me like Red Room Dungeon vibes.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
And then Chekhov, like we look at it and we think, oh, Chekhov, that's cool. But like at the time, you have to remember we talked a little bit about the Cold War stuff during our Stranger Things coverage, and that was the 80s.
Yeah.
This is the 60s, and like having a character on the bridge who's a Russian during the Cold War was a big deal. Like, not quotes in like a mocking way, but like in a it's a big deal.
Yeah.
To have this character on the ship. So like Roddenberry wanted to show, you know, that eventually
Not
at a
all
time
of them are bad.
yeah, well, that and that even our enemies can end up being our allies with enough time. So
Totally.
yeah, Chekhov was a big deal. Like if you look at that bridge scene, you've got Kirk, Scotty, Bones, and then Spock, Chekhov, Sulu, Uhura. There was another black woman in a sciences blue dress. Like there's a lot of diversity on that bridge.
Yeah.
In that shot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great to see. We love to see it. And yeah, so that was exciting because it's funny as I've been collecting Star Trek figures, a lot of Playmates ones, obviously. And yeah, anything original series, I always see Chekhov, but I'm like, oh, I haven't even seen Chekhov yet. And you know, it's interesting that he's not even in the first season. Like, I get it's still the original series, but like, I'm like, I like the OG.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I guess I can collect it.
Yeah. Now he's real.
Yes,
He
he's
actually
real.
exists.
But isn't he not Russian in real life, or weren't we talking about that on? Oh no. It was Scotty. This is the first in Strange New Worlds. This is the first actor that's actually Scottish.
Actually Scottish, yeah, because
Scottish.
James Doohan's Canadian.
Okay. That's what it was. I was getting them confused. Okay. So then we have Kirk is relaxing and then FaceTimes Chekhov to ask how late they would be to Altair if they went full speed to Vulcan first. And Chekhov's like, Spock already ordered us to go there first. And Kirk's like, excuse me? And so Kirk interrogates Spock. Spock doesn't remember doing it. And Kirk tells Spock to go to sick bay, where McCoy examines him and tells Kirk, you know, Spock needs to go to Vulcan within a week or else he'll die, but like can't really explain why. It's just kind of, he's just kind of deteriorating essentially. And then we get this shot of Spock looking at a picture of a girl on a computer when Kirk walks in, and I was like, that's a little creepy. And then, you know, figure out that was T'Pring since they were married at age 7. Totally fine.
Yeah.
And then Kirk notices Spock's hand is shaking too, and you know, starts to talk about it more, and Spock's like, it has to do with biology, and Kirk's like, is this a reproductive problem or something? And he's like, it happens to all of us, the birds and the bees. And, Spock ends up telling him about the Vulcan mating ritual. And so I was like, okay, so you have to return to mate. And so he must take a wife or die. Which I'm like, that is
What?
very extreme.
Yeah. What did you think about this whole conversation between Kirk and Spock?
Yeah, it was confusing because, like, obviously he's kind of giving him half answers, it seems like. And, he even says, like, our Vulcan rituals are hard for anyone else to comprehend, especially humans. Um, yeah, I don't know. It was interesting because then, like, I feel like their conversation, like, he didn't explain what was actually going to happen when they went down there either,
Yeah.
you
Like,
know?
my note is this whole conversation is dumb, and like I don't know if dumb is the right word, but it's like I get that we need to know what's going on as the audience, like, and maybe that's part of it, but on the other hand, like they could
They could have just shown us.
could have shown us in a different way and just have Kirk trust Spock and McCoy. McCoy's like, Spock needs to go to Vulcan or he's gonna die. And
Yeah, the fact that McCoy was, like, all on board and, McCoy
couldn't
isn't
even
Spock's
really
biggest fan.
explain. Yeah, and
Yeah.
couldn't even really explain what's going on or why, but he knew that if Spock didn't get back to Vulcan, he was gonna die. And Kirk is still like, no, fuck you. Tell me why we need to go there. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
just
Just
trust your
him.
people. Like,
Which I don't know. It's interesting because then, yeah, like, Spock ends up bringing Kirk and McCoy down, which that was very telling that he asked McCoy down, even though McCoy doesn't like him very
yeah,
much.
they're friends. I don't know that I would say.
Yeah, they're friends now.
They're very contentious with each other, but they have
They
a
like to
friendly
poke fun.
rivalry. Yeah.
Yeah. They like to tease each other. But yeah, so anyways, let's see. He must take a wife or die. Spock is playing his harp thing, and then he gets really annoyed when Uhura calls him, and he literally smashes the computer. It's like, damn, he's strong.
Spock's drunk.
Yeah. Kirk asks the officer, or Kirk talks to the officer asking for a delay, and officer says he can't. This is a very important ceremony they must go to. And so Kirk tells Chekhov to go to Vulcan, and Chapel gets very excited when she hears this news and walks out to see Spock, which she ends up seeing Spock, and she's like creepily watching him sleep.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, especially after the outburst at the beginning of
his room.
the episode when he throws the fucking soup at her. Like, why would you go back into his quarters
Johnny.
after what?
Johnny, this is like so indicative of abusive relationships. Like, there's people that go back time and time again. It makes absolutely no sense. Like, obviously there's times where there's restraints, so people have to go back, but like, it happens.
I know, and I understand that. It's one of those things where there's a little bit of a disconnect between what we're seeing now with Strange New Worlds and the characterization we're seeing of, like, the Chapel from Strange New Worlds. I don't see her doing any of this. Like,
no, I think she would notice these red flags and be like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, she seems a little more grounded in that aspect, whereas Chapel, I think, is very, like, caught up in it in TOS. Yeah, so she watches him sleep, and then Spock says he had a dream that she tried to tell him something, which, interesting. But yeah, it's interesting that we don't get more background. Like I feel like they just kind of jumped 10 steps ahead with their relationship without showing us anything else. But I mean, they've also done that with I guess a lot of other stuff in TOS where you're just kind of thrown into it.
Hmm.
But yeah.
It's some of the nature of earlier episodic television. Like
Hmm.
you just accept the background, like, oh, these guys are in a relation or these guys have a thing. I never noticed that before. But okay, makes sense. Like you
Yeah.
just kind of very
Accept and move
high,
on.
yeah, suspension of disbelief with some things.
Hmm. Definitely. And then it was very sweet though. He asked her to make the soup again because, guessing he felt bad, which I was
Yeah,
like, typical men realizing they effed up and have to like, grovel back. And we're just like, okay, they're fine now. He's being nice to me again. I've never been there. And Spock asked Kirk to beam down with him, and then asked McCoy as well for the ceremony, or not the ceremony, but this. Yeah, they actually don't really know what's going
yeah,
on. And before that, though, T'Pring shows up on the screen. Hello, I know, and
yeah,
and I was so shocked how much she looked like Strange New Worlds to Pring. Like they did
hmm,
such a good job with casting in Strange New Worlds for her. And like her mannerisms, like her dress, like obviously they couldn't do as extravagant things with her dress and costume as they
yeah.
do in Strange New Worlds, but like very similar vibes for sure. Yeah, so that was cool. And they
This
did their
is
never and always touching and touched and
yeah.
whole spiel.
The weirdest. I still think that it's so weird,
So
but
formal and like I
yeah,
get that they're formal and logical people, but it's still very weird.
yeah.
Especially cuz like I don't know the last time they interacted, like was it when they were 7 and like
I from in this without Strange New Worlds, yeah, it's hard to say. Like because
mhm
this is it for T'Pring in the original series. Like she shows up in this
mhm
episode, and I'm pretty sure we don't ever see her again. Like
okay.
she's never mentioned.
Interesting.
So in
Interesting.
those terms, I think it was the implication that like they haven't really interacted since Spock was at least since Spock left Vulcan to go to Starfleet. Obviously in
Yeah.
Strange New Worlds we see they've had interactions, and that's one of
Mhm.
the other interesting kind of disconnect things between Strange New Worlds and this is like when she comes up on the screen and he's like she's my wife and Chapel looks at him like utterly shocked, like she had no idea,
Yep.
like obviously she
Yep.
knows, but
Yep.
it's one of those things you gotta
Yeah. It
take
is what it
the
is.
yeah, so there's gonna be some. I can accept the continuity like
Error.
disconnect
Yeah.
with all the awesome that we've gotten from Strange New Worlds.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Same. I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem with it. But I mean, I'm also just very new to all this too.
Hmm. You don't have
Um
like 30 years of Star Trek fandom where you're like, no, they can't do this. This is not what they showed.
That's not my T'Pring.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
met Strange New Worlds to Pring before this to Pring, so like
Yeah, I did. I did.
yeah.
And I like both of them. Obviously they're very similar. And they're both kind of very like they know what they want and are very like confident and yeah,
I
cool
think they did a
character.
really good job writing Strange New Worlds to Pring based off just the
Hmm.
character's appearance in this episode, like just this one.
Yeah, that's crazy that it's just one episode and they did all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, we get the reveal that she's his wife, and everyone's like, "What?" And Spock, Kirk, and Bones beam down, and yeah, we see the similar kind of arena of columns that there is in Strange New Worlds, and Spock must fight for his marriage, but may not have to. It's very confusing. But yeah, then that's when he lets them know that they were married at 7 years old. I was like, that's not weird at all. And this lady is being carried out, who we found out is T'Pau. And uh, she's the only person to have turned down the Federation Council because she's a badass bitch, I guess.
She's a boss bitch, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, because when she tells the Federation that it's okay for them to come there, they're like, okay, it's okay now.
Yeah.
Like, clearly they, respect. That's maybe not the right word. They,
No, definitely. I think that's right.
They respect her. But
they have a sort of reverence for T'Pau.
Yeah.
Which
essentially
interesting note. There's T'Pau, there's T'Pring. In Enterprise, there's a Vulcan woman named T'Pol. Like, they like the T apostrophe P names for Vulcan women. And apparently, the T apostrophe, one of the things I was reading on Memory Alpha was that like basically all the Vulcan women we've seen are T apostrophe something.
Is that just how all their names are?
I guess.
Maybe.
All the ones we've seen have been something.
Because Spock's mom is human, so she wouldn't have a name. Spock bows to her and says that his friends are there to watch. And
kinky.
Yes, indeed. They are voyeurs. And Spock goes up to hit this gong thing, and right before he does, T'Pring stops him, which, this is very similar vibes to what we saw in Strange New Worlds. And she chooses a challenger by doing that, and she'll pick her... or chooses a challenge by doing that. She'll pick her champion, which everyone assumes is this dude that she brought, which was Ston. Was that his name?
Yeah.
Something.
Ston.
Yeah. Which also, I'm like, do guys' names start with S?
Seems like it because Spock and Ston, and then
what's Spock's dad's name?
Sarek.
Brother.
Cybok. They're all S's.
So S and T, and they come after each other in the alphabet. Interesting. And so she ends up choosing Kirk. Plot twist, but Kirk doesn't know it's a fight to the death. And but T'Pau tells Kirk, like, you're not one of us, you can decline if you want. And that's when Kirk and Bones talk, and they're like, well, if this other dude goes up against Spock, like, Spock's probably gonna be defeated, so, like, it would be better if you went against him and lost. And so he accepts the challenge, and they're given these lurpas, which is kind of like a rounded axe thing with the weight on the other end. Never seen those before.
Yeah, it's a strange weapon.
A very strange weapon. And then he finds out it's a combat to the death. It's like, great. Like, how the fuck are we gonna get out of this one?
It feels like that's a point where you could be like, oh, well, shit, like, I didn't know that, let me back out. Like, since he was an off-worlder and would be allowed to like decline, he didn't know it was a fight to the death. Maybe you give him another chance to decline. Yeah.
Like, how they didn't tell him that, it was a little sketch. So then they fight, and Kirk's shirt was ripped open, so we see some of Kirk's chest, as we always do. And then T'Pau kind of pauses things, and Bones, like, comes up to her and is like, this is an unfair advantage. Like, Kirk isn't used to this atmosphere, this heat. Let me give him something to, like, help him breathe better. So he injects him with what we assume is something to help him. Later we find out it's not.
Mhm.
And and then they are given new weapons, which is like this rope belt thing, like whip, I don't know. And Spock ends up suffocating Kirk, and Kirk dies, quote unquote. And Bones confirms it. And that's when I was like, did he give him something just to like paralyze him and make his breathing slow down? That's when I was like onto it. I was like,
Yeah, because
obviously Kirk's
clearly he's
not
not
dead.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly he's not dead. And I was like, oh, that's so smart of Bones. Yeah, and then Bones says Spock is in command now, asks for orders. And Spock says, plot a course for the nearest starbase so he can surrender himself to authorities. And Spock then asks T'Pring why she chose Kirk. And she's like, well, I want Ston. So, like, the only way I could divorce you is through fighting. And if Kirk won, he would release T'Pring. And then Spock would release her anyways because she challenged him. So, like, that was the best result for her to be with Ston. And so Spock is like, okay, I released you. You can be with Ston. That's fine with me. But then he also tells Ston, he's like, having and wanting are different things. And I'm like, a little bitter?
Yeah.
Or just like, I don't know. Like, I just like, I don't know how to say this. Like, clearly there's more to the story that like we don't know. And
Right.
that just gives it gives the impression that there was some more history between them at 7 years old and now, which guess we got that in Strange New Worlds. Yeah,
But we still
I
don't
don't
know
know.
where the Strange New Worlds writers are going to take it, because as of right now in Strange New Worlds, they're like on a break. Like,
Yeah. We were on a break.
yeah.
And then
It didn't take this much effort to break the engagement, like when Captain Angel took over the Enterprise and they were, acting
yeah.
like he had an affair with Chapel, and she's like, well, then we're done, see ya. Like,
Yeah,
so
totally.
but
Yeah,
again,
it didn't take
this
long
is
at all.
50 years, nearly 60 years ago. So
Yeah. That's crazy how long ago it was. And yeah, and then Spock does yeah, I'm just holding his he does live long and prosper
yes,
to Pow. Was that the first time?
yes.
Yes, I got it right. I was starting to second guess myself. I'm like, I don't think we've seen it before. Which I guess makes sense because this is this the first ever other Vulcan we've seen?
Yes, these are the
Yeah.
first other Vulcans we've seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's very exciting.
Speaking of, I looked up some like named Vulcans on Memory Alpha, and there are Vulcans who are not T and S, and we even saw one in Strange New Worlds. The Vulcan that was in Ad Astra Per Aspera, the Vulcan judge, was Chiv.
Chiv.
Yeah, and
Interesting
T'Pring's like aide who called her when Spock and T'Pring switched bodies, her name is Catil. So, and then there's some other Vulcans there's some Vulcans in Voyager and whatnot that are different names with different letters too. But as of this point, like all the Vulcans we've seen are T, P, something, and S's.
T, P. Interesting. Oh well, darn. Thought we were onto something. And Spock comes back on the ship. He finds out Kirk is alive and gets so excited to see him, and he
really
smiles and exclaims, and then he's like, "Oh shit, I need to not do that."
It's like, Jim! Like, and he looked so happy.
He looked so excited. And and so then he tells them apparently after killing Captain Kirk, he lost all interest in T'Pring, and I was like, sure, Jan, that's how it happened. Like, I'm sure, like, that might have been partially true, but that's not the whole story, obviously. Like, T'Pring was really the mastermind of the whole thing, which once
Yeah.
again, love that for her. Yeah, and then Bones calls out Spock for his emotional reaction. He's like, "No, that wasn't me." I'm like, "Oh my god, Spock's so in denial."
It makes
And
me
that's
think of
it.
the Spock saying once he killed Kirk, like he didn't care anymore. Is like just I have fucking Sublime running through my head, fucking and fighting. It's all the same. So like maybe that's how Pon Far works. You either have to fuck someone or kill someone, and that like makes the chemicals rolling through your body subside and calms you down. You have to have sex or murder something.
God. Two very different things.
Yeah.
Oh, the Vulcans. They're interesting ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for Amok Time.
Well,
That I
like
have, at least.
they've said in prior episodes, like Vulcans used to be very, very emotional, like and pursued logic to kind of tamp those emotions down to get better control of themselves. And Pon farr is just I think Spock even says something about it too, like ancient like design, like ancient biology, like something they can't get past. Even logic can't get them past it. So
Interesting. Okay. Huh.
it's part of who they are.
Can't do anything about it. Interesting.
So
Fascinating.
that does it for general. That brings us to favorite lines and moments.
I feel like any of the fighting scenes are always my favorite just because
Yeah.
they're so funny. And then I think Spock, like, even though like it wasn't fun or funny or anything, but like Spock just being an asshole was, I guess, kind of funny to see because very different from him, and like throwing the soup and everything. But yeah, I don't think there was any specific lines, and I've already mentioned. Oh, there was, and he's as tight-lipped about it as a Aldebaran shell mouth. McCoy said to Kirk about Spock. I was like, the fuck is that? Yeah, let's see. Oh, and then when Kirk says, "Your face is wet." Or sorry, Spock says it.
Yeah, to Christine.
Yeah. Which I almost put in the "that's what they said," but I'm like, could go either way, I guess. But yeah, what about you?
Nothing really that you didn't cover.
Oh, live long and prosper. That kind of,
Yeah.
big moment.
Yeah, those are two. Like, and the having is not so pleasing a thing as wanting. It is not logical, but often it is true. Like that's a pretty famous Spock quote. Spockism,
interesting.
Vulcanism, and then obviously live long and prosper came out of this episode too, which has a lot more legs than having is not so pleasing a thing. It gets said a lot more.
Yeah.
The other one, it's hard to work it into conversation. I was a little I think and it's probably on one of those relics of the time things, and because we didn't get this impression of it all throughout Strange New Worlds and whatnot, but like with the betrothals and whatnot, and Stan and Spock talking about, and it's weird too because like they refer to Pring almost like she's property through the like.
They do.
But also T'Pau is like, it's her right. Like it seems like it's not necessarily just that T'Pring belongs to whoever, but also that they belong to each other more so than one is the other's property.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me being like hoping that that's the case.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I was like, I think I don't know. It could also be one of those things where they, what's the word? Like bait women into thinking they have a choice with
Yeah.
things when really they don't. So this is what they do, but like ultimately, yeah, they're like you'll belong to whoever wins. Like they literally say that you'll be the property. So yeah, I don't know if it's that. I hope it's that they both belong like to each other and are each other's properties. Like I hope it's equal, but I no idea.
Yeah, you would hope, but it as progressive as it is, it's still the 60s and
Yeah. Well, and considering I was thinking about this while I was watching these this morning, and it's like they're trying to like they're trying to be progressive with the like diversity and including characters and like, you know, saying how like women are equal now and all this stuff, but at the same time they tend to show a lot of cultures and worlds that like women are second class citizens
mm-hmm.
or you know or there's racism and blah blah blah, and I'm just like okay, but like I don't know, you're still showing the future, and wouldn't other civilizations also have progressed? Or I don't know, are they trying to just show how far humans have progressed? It just like sucks that to still see it, I guess.
Yeah.
um I don't know. It's
There's
a
also a
tricky one.
line. There's also a line. Spock says to Kirk and McCoy after he throws the soup out the door. It's undignified for a woman to play servant to a man who is not hers.
Yeah.
Like the play servant wording is kind of odd in that, but to a man who is
Mhm.
not hers also kind of like implies
Property.
that but it implies that the male is property of the woman in that case, like that they are,
Uh-huh.
there is a, you know, property is the bad way, like there is ownership
Yeah.
of each other
Yeah.
rather than an unequal
Yeah.
ownership.
So maybe it is ownership both ways in Vulcan,
And it could be one of
which
those,
still is toxic. Like,
but yeah,
let's make
well,
that
it could
clear.
also be one of those this isn't the way that it actually is anymore, but it's tradition and that's how we refer to it, which is still its own
Got
problem.
it.
But
Yeah, yeah,
like that's not actually the case. Neither of them is actually the other's property, but they still use
yeah.
those terms because
Yeah.
that's the Vulcan tradition. I don't know, I'm just spitballing.
Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway,
Lot to think about, lot to speculate, and yeah, I feel like we could have like a whole separate discussion on all of this stuff.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, ultimately, I think because people had hyped up this episode so much, I don't know if it quite met my expectations. But I still enjoyed the episode, and it was different than what I was expecting it to be. I was kind of, yeah, expecting Spock to just go crazy, kind of like when he was like a human in
Mm-hmm.
Strange New Worlds. And that kind of happened, kind of didn't happen. But yeah, it was still cool to see like T'Pring and the ceremony and the challenge and that whole like tradition and everything. Like I wasn't expecting to see all of that, and it was cool. I was like, oh, like I know what this is. Like I've seen it, like seen I've kind of seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool. Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more. There's some stuff I want to do during the episode trivia thing that are quotes
Okay.
from people about this episode. So we'll get into a little more into it and not living up to expectation.
Okay.
But if you don't have any other favorite moments, lines, whatever, then that'll bring us to That's What They Said.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can.
Okay.
So this is your That's What They Said for episode 30, Amok Time. All right, Spock, let's have it.
Come with me, please.
I'm all ready for you.
Examine me.
That's an enormous ass.
Laid it. Damn it. Laying it in, sir.
Never and always. Touching and touched.
All of Vulcan in one package.
You may proceed.
Yay. Also, that's an enormous at. The rest of the quote was asset
No.
to me. And Kirk
You
said
just
it.
stopped listening
And I was like,
after ass?
No. I purposely decided to shorten it. That's why there's the dash after ass.
I saw that, but I just, yeah.
So just to clarify, that wasn't exactly said.
So that will bring us to episode trivia from Memory Alpha for Amok Time. So, Arlene Martell, who played T'Pring, was among the actresses considered for the role of Dr. Elizabeth Daner in the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. However, she turned down the offer because she felt wearing silver contact lenses would damage her sensitive eyes. She later auditioned for the role of Sylvia in an episode called Cat's Paw, but she was not cast because the production staff had seen her as the ideal candidate for the role of T'Pring.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Spock has definitely been promoted from Lieutenant Commander as of this episode. The nameplate outside his quarters reads Commander Spock, and Vulcan Space Command later asked for him as Commander Spock. I don't know if the talking to him as because there are throughout all of Star Trek lots of lieutenant commanders are just referred to as commander. Like they don't say lieutenant commander every time. It's more like if the captain's going to refer to your rank as if you're a lieutenant commander and a higher ranking officer is talking to you, and instead of talking to you and saying just commander, they say lieutenant commander, you fucked up and you're in trouble. It's like they're using your government name. Reminding you of your rank.
Like when your parents use your full name. Oh, that's scary.
Yeah. The fight music for this episode was reused in a number of second season episodes. It became one of the most memorable themes of the show and also appeared in numerous other television series and feature films, usually as a spoof or homage to this episode. Composer Gerald Fried became aware of the popularity of this theme when he began getting royalty checks for its usage from The Simpsons. Michael Giacchino incorporated... Giacchino incorporated the first few notes of the theme into the climax of Star Trek Into Darkness.
Love him. He did the Lost music and is besties with Ralph.
Yeah. Since the Vulcans' mating cycle seemed to be too adult a topic for West German TV at the time. This is a ride. Get ready. Since the Vulcans' mating cycle seemed to be too adult a topic for West German TV at the time, ZDF aired a version that radically changed the dialogue, rearranging some scenes while cutting others. As a result, Spock, instead of going through Pon farr, suffers from some lethal disease. The German episode title is, I can't pronounce it, but it translates as space fever. To save his life, McCoy administers an experimental drug that leaves Spock delusional. Large parts of the episode, such as the Enterprise visiting Vulcan, Spock fighting and eventually killing Kirk, are explained away as hallucinations. In 1996, using the title Pon farr, the episode was redubbed, restoring the original story.
See, that makes more sense with calling it Amok Time. Like, I wonder if they just...
If it was hallucinations and whatnot, yeah.
Like,
I don't understand. The name of the episode doesn't make sense to me. Amok Time. I think we talked about this off camera before we started.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get what it's supposed to be referring to.
I don't either. I think like I started seeing at least that, the part. Just him going crazy and not acting himself and acting out, like, yeah. But it was like more so like Spock angry and mad and horny ?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't really like him going crazy like in like when people did in like the naked time and stuff like that.
Oh. Huh.
What?
Okay, wait, hang on a second. I'm like, I don't even think it's right, because I thought amok was AMOCK, like something, but it's amok. Because AMOK is the word I don't know if I've ever seen it in print. I've only ever heard it, and I've always heard it pronounced amok. It's like run amok, behave uncontrollably and disruptively.
Oh, so it is amok.
Yeah.
But it's spelled AMOK.
Well, that's how the word amok is spelled. Yeah, like
Really?
I thought, like, yeah, I just googled it. I thought run amok was like AMUK. But it's AMOK.
Or AMUCK.
Yeah.
I want to know how it's spelled in Hocus Pocus now. Okay, how it shows up is AMUCK.
Yeah, it says apparently that is a less common spelling. Merriam-Webster's website says
so maybe it's changed in the last 60 years.
Maybe less commonly amok, AMUCK. Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating.
So maybe it is Amok Time. It also says
whatever. I'm sure someone will tell us.
Yeah, we'll get it in the comments.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's one of those words like well, there was just one that came up recently. I heard something about like there's two different ways to pronounce it. Oh, gigawatts and gigawatts. They're both correct. Either way is correct.
Oh, okay.
Technically, cool. by the laws of wordage.
By the laws of Back to the Future.
Yeah, but both ways of saying that gigawatts is just as correct as gigawatts. Either way is fine. So yeah. Okay. This episode was nominated for a Hugo Award in 1968 as Best Dramatic Presentation. And as the first episode aired in season 2, the segment debuted the new second season opening credits. DeForest Kelley's name was added to the starring cast, and the theme music was extended and had a female soprano voice of Luli Jean Norman and percussion added to it.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice. The thing I said about talking about this not living up to expectations, that was the next episode. Those were quotes about. There's not quotes about this, so never mind.
Okay. Interesting.
Wait, but I think there was something though. Hang on, I gotta see. There might have been something I read that I didn't put in because I was like, nah, I don't think that's important. And then you said something that led to it. Oh yeah. Leonard Nimoy remarked, "I remember it very well. Excellent script, very poetic, very dramatic, intense, and important. I felt immediately for Spock and Vulcans. It was a very, very exciting episode to shoot and perform. It was so beautifully written and had great casting of other people. It was very good." Really? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it. It's a good episode. Yeah. It's not this masterpiece of American cinema. Like, there's a lot of praise for this episode. Anthony Rapp,
maybe at the time,
maybe, but Gene Roddenberry picked this as one of his 10 favorites. Anthony Rapp described this as one of his 2 favorite Star Trek episodes. Michael Chabon saw part of this episode. There's a really long, but his father considered it the second best episode of Star Trek. He also feels the same way, like similar things about the episode. It's like, I mean, it's fine, but there's other episodes I've seen so far, like that I would say I enjoyed more than this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I'll get more into it when we rank it. I'll give more of my thoughts, but I have thoughts.
So that will bring us to spoilers without context.
Whoop, whoop.
So since I went first with That's What They Said, we will have you go first. We will pull Ensign Kayla's up on the screen.
Yes, indeedy. So I had to do iconic no soup for you guy, which can't say his character's nickname apparently on YouTube.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so from Seinfeld, iconic episode No Soup for You because Spock threw the soup. and and then I had to take the images from Strange New Worlds with Spock with the gong and then T'Pring in that banging dress because I mean it's just like Chapel. Like if I can put T'Pring, especially in that dress, like there we go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And then this is kind of a deep cut, but if you know Lost, this is Nikki and Paulo, which I did them because, I mean, it's not the same thing, but it's similar where they got bit by a spider and it essentially like paralyzed and slowed down their heart rate. So people thought they were dead.
Wow.
And like same thing happened with Kirk with what Bones injected him with. So yeah, that's why I put them.
Gotcha. can't pass up using T'Pring using
Chapel.
a Lost reference using Chapel.
Oh yeah.
You got all your
Lost was like my OG like obsession, like deep dive. Like I was into Harry Potter, but I wasn't like that was kind of like my first sci-fi fantasy thing I was into. But it was like I wasn't like I don't know, like looking up fan theories online about it or anything. Like I was also too young. Like I was really young when I first read it. And that really wasn't a thing until Lost came around. And so, yeah, it's just one of my OG loves and my favorite TV show. So got to do it.
And you have to love the soup, not letter after B.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I grew up watching Seinfeld all the time, so love Seinfeld.
Okay. Very good. We will now bring my spoilers without context up on the screen. So this first one, I don't know if you're familiar with the Family Circus comic strip. Like they always had this thing where they send like one of the kids to do something, and this just reminded. That's what I thought of. Was okay, we're going to Altair 6. Nope, we're going to Vulcan. No, we're going to Altair 6. No, we're going to Vulcan.
That's funny. I was wondering what that was. I was like, it looks familiar, but then also like, what is this for?
Yeah,
that's good. So, that's a good one.
And then of course, marriage. I had to use the marriage.
You gotta include that every time.
Anytime there's a wedding or anything like that, and then the love bed because like Spock's got to get down or
down and dirty.
Yep.
Down or dirty, essentially, or both at the same time.
And then the Lurpas made me think of American Gladiators with like the whatever.
I thought of that too. Yeah. That's good.
The giant Q-tips.
Solid. Yes, exactly. Those are solid. Good ones.
Thank you. So that'll bring us to ranking the episode. Ensign Kayla.
Okay.
How do you rank Amok Time?
Amok.
Feel right.
Maybe because Amok rhymes with Spock.
That's what I think. So because of the Strange New Worlds episode is Spock Amok, but Spock Amok sounds so much better. Like, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Not a big deal at the end of the day. No. I'm sure someone will make it a big deal, but it's fine. We don't care as much. So this is one of the ones where I feel like I must bow to the higher powers and give it Captain. Because it is so iconic, and I did thoroughly enjoy it. If I personally wanted to rank it, I would probably rank it Commander, but I think because it is so iconic, you gotta watch it. So Captain. Like I mentioned before, I think it like didn't quite live up to expectations. But yeah, I still enjoyed the story. It was kind of all over the place, kind of unclear because we didn't get a lot of the background, and then we were kind of just thrown into it, like both with Chapel and then with Spock and this ceremony and being married and like finding out, like we just got dumped all this stuff. And I did enjoy like his I mean, like, this is obviously some character development for him. So, like, I think those episodes are always good to watch, even though it kind of felt like half character development. Like, we were seeing this, like, really big event happen, but at the same time, we were learning so much about Spock that, like, we had no idea before, but only still kind of learning half of it. So yeah, lots of mixed feelings for this episode for sure. But ultimately it was good, like something very different from what we've seen. And, you know, there was still kind of like high stakes with this challenge and like Kirk being involved and Kirk dying, which obviously we knew he wasn't dead. But and we've totally seen that trope before where, you know, people are essentially paralyzed and people think they're dead and they're alive. I don't know how much it had been seen before this episode, but yeah, so that's a thing. Yeah. So ultimately it was good. It was exciting to an extent, I would say, with the challenge. But yeah, I don't know if it quite lived up to what I expected it to be like. I think because of what we talked about, we were thinking more Spock would be just like going around doing crazy shit. Like shit's getting fucked. But wasn't quite that. Wasn't quite that. Yeah, but ultimately because I know like how well known this episode is and how much everyone's like, go, like, oh, wait till you get to Spock Amok. And I'm like, okay. And now that I've gotten there, I'm like, okay. Yeah. I was expecting, like I said, I was expecting shit to get fucked, and there wasn't. And I don't mean it like that.
Well, that didn't happen either.
No. I would have given it some bonus points if that happened. Or like when like Spock pretty much said to Chapel, like, oh, we should like give in to stuff, and she's like, what do you mean? I was like, are they gonna make out now? I would have given it points for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Captain.
Okay. Captain as well. I'm solely Captain though. Like I don't have. I just think it is an essential episode to watch because of so much development for Spock and all that. Yeah, I don't have much of other reason to say besides like it's a Captain ranked episode. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I would be. It probably is one of the top 10 episodes of the series as a whole. So I think that by itself would warrant it being a Captain. I do think, again, there are other episodes in the first season that I did liked more than this. And there's probably episodes later to come that I'm going to like more than this. But I do think it is essential to watch.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Unanimous rank of Captain for
Woot.
Amok Time.
Muck.
That will bring us to our next episode. Who mourns for Adonis? IMDb.com says a powerful being claiming to be the Greek god Apollo appears and demands that the crew of the Enterprise disembark onto his planet to worship him.
Well, pretty good summary, I'd say. Indeed. Right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate it if you would take a moment to smack that like, smack that subscribe if you're not already subscribed, smack that bell icon to get notified. Love talking about Trek with all of you. Very excited to be getting into the second season. Can't believe we're getting into the second season. Feels like yesterday that we started this. Very, very excited and very grateful to everyone. And I think by this point we should have hit 300, I'm hoping, or should be around then. So
It keeps
exciting. It keeps ticking around then. So
fluctuating.
very, very grateful. Thanks everyone. Yeah, if you want to follow us, you can follow us at GTFO channel on all the socials. If you want to email us, our email is channelgtfo@gmail.com. And yeah, can find updates for things on all those socials, on Instagram, Twitter, Threads. And yeah, we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Stranger Things season 2 Wednesdays the rest of the month. And look forward to us talking about Revelation at the end of January, and then talking about Motu Revolution after that. And
And
yeah.
if you're watching this way in the future, if
Oh,
you're interested in them, go find the replays.
Yeah.
All that stuff is on the
Exactly.
channel. A lot of that
Yes.
will be under live rather than videos because we do a lot of live streams. So check those
Mm-hmm.
places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, until next time, peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.
Bye.